Let's talk about electricity. You think you know what it is, don't you? After all, you use it constantly. Right now, trillions of electrons are shuffling through the device in your hands. Electricity is the silent ghost powering the lights above you, keeping your food from rotting and tethering your entire life to a wall socket. It is the most familiar thing in the world, so surely you must understand it. But try to explain it. What actually happens when you plug something into a wall? Where does that power truly come from, and what is it at its core? Most people offer something vague. They say it's energy, or electrons moving, or current in a wire. But here is what bothers me about those answers. They don't actually explain anything. They just rename the mystery. Sure, electrons are moving, but why? What is reaching out and grabbing them? What is doing the push? The truth is far stranger than the diagrams in your middle school textbooks. The thing we call electricity is deeply, profoundly weird, and the way we usually talk about it completely hides that weirdness. We make it sound like a utility, predictable, safe, and mechanical. But once you peek behind the curtain, you realize that we are manipulating something absolutely extraordinary. We are dealing with a phenomenon that breaks every intuition you have about how the world operates. Let me show you what I mean. Take a simple piece of plastic wrap, rip off a strip, and rub it between your hands quickly. Then hold it near the back of your hand without touching it. You can feel the hairs on your arm reaching out, tugging toward the plastic through the empty space. Stop and think about that. You rubbed plastic. No batteries, no wires, just friction. And now that plastic can reach across the air and pull on your body. In your normal experience of the world, things only push or pull when they are touching. You touch a chair to move it. You touch a book to lift it. But here is a piece of plastic wrap demonstrating the impossible, acting at a distance. Most people shrug this off as static electricity, as if the name makes it mundane. It isn't mundane. You are looking at the same fundamental force that holds every atom in your body together. You are seeing the force that allows your neurons to fire and your eyes to see, demonstrating its ability to leap across a gap. We have become so familiar with this power that we've forgotten how absolutely insane it is. The reality is that when you rub that plastic, you scraped a few trillion electrons off your hands and piled them onto the film, and those excess electrons despise each other. They are pushing away from each other with a force so large you literally cannot comprehend it. To understand what we are truly dealing with, we have to look at the monstrous scale of this fundamental force compared to everything else we know. To grasp the scale of what is happening in that empty space, you have to compare it to the only other force you feel every day, gravity. Imagine taking just two electrons and placing them a single centimeter apart. Both have mass, so they pull on each other with gravity. Both have charge, so they push each other away with electromagnetic repulsion. The difference in strength is not just large, it is cosmic. The electromagnetic force between them is 10 to the power of 42 times stronger than the gravitational force. That is a 1 followed by 42 zeros. To an electron, gravity is so weak it might as well not exist. It is a rounding error in the math of the universe. If the forces governing our world were even slightly less lopsided, the universe as we know it would vanish. This leads to a haunting question. If these forces are so monstrously strong, why isn't everything exploding? If every electron in your body is screaming to get away from every other electron with a force billions of times stronger than the gravity of the entire Earth, why don't you simply tear yourself apart? The answer is a masterpiece of cosmic cancellation. Think about the architecture of an atom. At the center, you have the positive charge of protons. Swirling around them, you have the negative charge of electrons. Positive and negative, plus and minus. Nature follows one rigid, absolute rule. Like repels like, and opposites attract. Crucially, these forces are exactly equal in magnitude. The push of repulsion is perfectly matched by the pull of attraction. In normal matter, you have an intimate, crowded mixture of these charges packed as close together as physics allows. Every positive charge is smothered by negatives. Every negative is surrounded by positives. They balance out so precisely that the net effect is zero. The monstrous forces are still there, vibrating with world-breaking intensity, but they are locked in a stalemate. Everything you see is neutral, not because the force is absent, but because it is perfectly balanced. This is why you only notice electricity when that balance is disturbed. When you rub that plastic wrap, you aren't creating power. You are merely moving one electron in every trillion. That is essentially nothing. But because the underlying fundamental force is so enormous, even that tiny, microscopic imbalance is enough to reach across the air and make your hair stand up. This realization should change everything about how you perceive the solid world around you. When you pick up a ceramic mug, you think you are feeling a physical substance. You think the atoms of your hand are touching the atoms of the clay. But they aren't, not even close. What you are actually feeling when you hold that mug is electromagnetic repulsion. As the atoms in your hand approach the atoms of the ceramic, the electrons in both surfaces begin to push away from each other with increasing, monstrous intensity. Because the force is so strong, the electrons refuse to overlap. Your hand never truly touches the mug. There is always a microscopic gap, a sliver of empty space where the forces are duking it out. You have never touched anything in your entire life. Every sensation of solidity, every push, every pull, and every feeling of resistance is just your nervous system interpreting the invisible fields acting at a distance. We live in a world of ghosts, where the illusion of contact is created by the sheer violence of these repulsive forces. This completely restructures the way you must view the physical world. Matter isn't solid because it's full of stuff. It's solid because it's full of force. This brings us to the next layer of the mystery, the wires in your walls. You have a copper wire stretching from an outlet to a lamp. You flip the switch, and the light appears instantly. If you ask most people why, they'll tell you that electricity flows like water, that electrons enter the wire at one end, zip down the metal, and pop out at the other. That explanation is fundamentally wrong. In reality, electrons in a copper wire move at a crawl, roughly 1 millimeter per second, at that speed. If an electron started at your wall outlet, it would take nearly half an hour just to reach the lamp on your desk. Yet, the bulb glows the microsecond you touch the switch. How can something that moves slower than a snail produce a result that is nearly instantaneous? The answer lies in the fact that the wire is not an empty pipe. It is a crowd. A copper wire is already packed with free electrons, just sitting there in a state of cancellation. When you close the switch, you don't wait for a fluid to travel the distance. Instead, you initiate the push. Think of a long line of people standing shoulder to shoulder. If you shove the person at the very front of the line, the person at the very back feels the jolt almost immediately. The first person didn't have to run to the end of the line to deliver the message. The force was transmitted through the connections of the crowd. In a wire, because electromagnetic repulsion acts so strongly and across a distance, when you push the first electron, it immediately shoves the next, which shoves the next. This signal, the push, propagates through the wire at nearly the speed of light. It is the force that travels, not the particles. This is the secret to why electricity is so useful. It allows us to transmit a command across vast distances of empty space without having to move physical matter very far at all. But if the electrons are just stay-at-home shufflers, we have to ask, where does that initial shove come from? To find the source of that shove, we have to trace the path backward. Your lamp leads to the outlet to the wires in your walls, and those wires eventually lead to a power plant that might be hundreds of miles away. At that plant, something massive is spinning, a turbine weighing several tons, rotating at thousands of revolutions per minute. The incredible reality of our world is that the spinning motion of a wheel in a distant valley is what is currently vibrating the electrons in your room. The bridge between that distant motion and your home is magnetism. For a long time, humans thought electricity and magnetism were two different things, like fire and water. But they aren't. They are two faces of the same coin, two aspects of the one unified fundamental force. When you move an electric charge, you create a magnetic field. When you change a magnetic field, you create an electric current. They are inseparable, locked in a perpetual dance of cause and effect. This is the heart of a generator. Inside that power plant, we are spinning coils of copper wire inside massive magnetic fields. The magnetic field reaches into the wire across the empty space and begins manipulating the electrons. It pushes them. It forces them to flow against their will. This is the most elegant trick in human history. We use magnetism as an invisible hand to reach into metal and create the push. But the truly mind-bending part is that you can run this process in reverse. If you take that same electricity and push it through a coil of wire inside a magnetic field, the field will push back on the wire, making it move. That is an electric motor. Generators turn motion into electricity. Motors turn electricity back into motion. They are the same phenomenon, just viewed from different ends of the wire. This means that every time you use a blender, or an elevator, or an electric car, you are witnessing a conversation between metal and magnets acting at a distance. We take it for granted that we can move metal in one place and make other metal move in another place with nothing but a thin copper thread connecting them. We have built a global civilization on the fact that we can transmit a physical shove across thousands of miles at the speed of light. This isn't just engineering. It is the practical application of a force that defies our basic understanding of how objects should interact. You don't even need a physical connection for this to work. If you take a coil of wire with electricity running through it and simply bring it near another coil, the changing magnetic field will jump the gap and start pushing electrons in the second coil. There is no wire connecting them, just empty space and a shared fundamental force. This is how a transformer works, and it is how the entire power grid breathes. It is the universe's way of proving that contact was always an illusion. This realization forces us to confront a deeper truth. The mechanical forces we think we understand, the simple acts of pushing a door or walking across a floor, are not what they seem. We've spent our lives believing in a world of solid objects hitting other solid objects, but those mechanical forces aren't fundamental. They are merely the macro-scale consequences of electromagnetic repulsion. When you push a door, you aren't touching the wood. You are creating a massive, invisible conflict between the electrons in your palm and the electrons in the door's surface. Your hand stays outside the door only because the fundamental force is too powerful to allow them to merge. When you walk, you are literally hovering on a cushion of repulsion, suspended a fraction of a millimeter above the floor by the sheer intensity of the push. This changes how we must define reality itself. We have evolved to understand contact because, at our scale, that's how the world appears. But contact is a lie. The real world is made of fields that permeate all of space. It is a world where acting at a distance is the only rule that matters. Everything we experience, every sensation of heat, every texture, every chemical bond that keeps your DNA from unraveling is just a different arrangement of this one force. Consider heat. We think of it as warmth, but on the atomic level, heat is just atoms vibrating because the electromagnetic forces holding them in place are being agitated. Consider light. When you see the glow of a sunset or the text on this screen, you are detecting oscillating electromagnetic fields hitting your eyes and causing the electrons in your retina to move. Even biology is just a complex series of electromagnetic interactions. Your thoughts are moving charges. Your heartbeat is a coordinated electromagnetic pulse. The deepest, most uncomfortable part of this truth is that you cannot explain this force in terms of anything simpler. You might want to say it's like a spring or a rubber band, but springs and rubber bands are themselves made of atoms held together by electromagnetic repulsion. You have to accept the force as a brute fact. It is one of the four pillars of the universe. We are not living in a world of machines and parts. We are living in a sea of invisible fields where matter is just a carefully balanced dance of cancellation. We aren't just using electricity. We are swimming in it. It is the fundamental fabric of everything you have ever known, and we have spent the last 2 centuries learning how to finally reach out and start manipulating the threads. For most of human history, this fundamental force was a terrifying ghost. We saw it in the flash of a lightning bolt, or felt it in the strange pull of a lodestone, but we had no way of speaking its language. We were observers of a power that seemed to belong to the gods. But then, a little over 2 centuries ago, the story of our species shifted. We stopped just watching the lightning and started manipulating the invisible. This transition from awe to command is one of the most significant pivots in the history of intelligence. It began with the realization that the empty space between objects isn't empty at all. It is a medium for communication. We discovered that by moving a magnet, we could send a message to an electron miles away. This was the birth of the telegraph, the first time in history that a human thought could travel faster than a horse. We had harnessed the push to overcome the limitations of distance. Suddenly, the world began to shrink. We realized that if we could control the rate of cancellation and repulsion in a wire, we could do more than just send dots and dashes. We could create artificial suns. When you look at an old incandescent light bulb, you are seeing a brutal fight. You are forcing a massive number of electrons through a very thin, stubborn piece of wire called a filament. The filament resists the push. It fights back with its own internal electromagnetic forces. That resistance creates heat. And when the friction of those trillions of electrons becomes intense enough, the filament begins to glow. It radiates electromagnetic waves light across the empty space of your room. In that moment, you have successfully converted the motion of a distant river or the heat of burning coal into a specific vibration of the electromagnetic field that you can see. This was the dawn of the electric age, but it was only the beginning. Once we understood that electricity and magnetism were unified, we realized we could build machines that didn't just light up, but thought. We learned how to create tiny, microscopic switches, transistors, that could start or stop the flow of electrons billions of times per second. By manipulating these tiny pulses, we moved from the age of motors to the age of information. Every computer, every smartphone, and every piece of software is just a sophisticated way of orchestrating electromagnetic repulsion to represent a 1 or a 0. We have taken a force that can tear atoms apart and trained it to show us a video or send a text. We are no longer just living in a world governed by these fields. We are actively rewriting them to suit our needs. We have built a digital civilization on top of a force that our ancestors could only perceive as magic. This command over the invisible doesn't stop at the machines we build. It extends into the very core of who we are. If all chemistry is electromagnetic and all biology is chemistry, then you are, at your most fundamental level, an electromagnetic event. Every thought you have ever had, every memory of a loved one, and every flicker of an emotion is a result of charged ions being manipulated across the membranes of your neurons. Your brain is not a computer in the mechanical sense. It is a complex theater of electromagnetic repulsion and attraction. When a neuron fires, it isn't sending a spark like a tiny bolt of lightning. Instead, it is opening microscopic gates, allowing positive and negative charges to rush past each other, creating a wave of electrical potential that travels down the nerve. This signal is the push scaled down to the level of a single cell. Because these fields permeate all of space, your body is constantly in a state of communication with the world around it. Your heart, the strongest electromagnetic generator in your body, produces a field that can be detected several feet away from your chest. Your muscles contract because of electrical signals sent from your brain, commanding the fibers to slide past each other using the same principles that power an industrial motor. We often think of nature as something green and growing, separate from the electric world of our cities, but there is no separation. The way a tree pulls water from its roots to its highest leaves relies on the electromagnetic grip between water molecules. The way a bird migrates across thousands of miles is possible because it can feel the Earth's magnetic field, a fundamental force guiding it through the empty space. When you understand this, the boundary between the artificial and the natural begins to dissolve. A power plant spinning a turbine and a heart pumping blood are both just different ways of organizing the same underlying reality. Both are reliant on the fact that the universe is not made of solid, isolated blocks, but of interconnected fields. This realization brings an incredible weight to our place in the universe. We are the only known part of this fundamental force that has become aware of itself. We are a collection of electromagnetic interactions that has learned to study electromagnetism. We have used our understanding of acting at a distance to peer into the hearts of atoms and out toward the edges of the galaxy. We are the force, observing the force. By mastering the art of manipulating these invisible connections, we have effectively constructed a second nature that blankets the entire planet. We call it the Internet, but more fundamentally, it is a global web of electromagnetic fields. When you send a message to someone on the other side of the world, you aren't sending an object. You are initiating a push that vibrates across oceans and continents at the speed of light. This is the ultimate triumph of acting at a distance. We have laid thousands of miles of fiber optic cables and launched hundreds of satellites into the empty space above our atmosphere. These machines communicate using light, high-frequency, electromagnetic waves to carry information. The cloud isn't in the sky. It is an omnipresent field of information that we are constantly tapping into. Think about the sheer complexity of this. At this very moment, billions of devices are whispering to each other across the electromagnetic spectrum. Your phone is detecting specific oscillating fields in the air, filtering out the noise of 1,000 other signals to find the one that belongs to you. This requires a level of precision in manipulating the fundamental force that would have been inconceivable just 50 years ago. We have essentially turned the entire planet into a single, giant circuit. This has changed the very structure of human society. In the past, information moved at the speed of a physical messenger, a person, or an animal crossing a distance. Today, information is decoupled from matter. Because the electromagnetic force is the fundamental reality of the universe, and it propagates so rapidly, we have effectively eliminated distance as a barrier to human thought. But this global web is still subject to the same brute facts of physics we discussed earlier. It still requires the push. It still requires the cancellation of charges in the silicon chips of our servers. Every like, every video stream, and every financial transaction is just a carefully orchestrated dance of electrons and photons. We have built a world of infinite complexity on a foundation of simple, invisible repulsion. When you look at a city at night from an airplane, you see the glowing veins of this second nature. You see the physical manifestation of our command over the electromagnetic force. But as complex as this looks, it is all just a variation on a theme. Whether it's the light in your kitchen or the server farm processing the world's data, it all comes back to the fact that we have learned to command the fields that weave the universe together. Despite our mastery over these fields, there remains a profound sense of unease when we confront the brute fact of our reality. Our brains did not evolve to understand the universe as it actually is. They evolved to help us survive in a world of medium-sized objects. We are biologically hardwired for the contact misconception. Your intuition tells you that the world is mechanical, solid, and tangible. It tells you that when you sit in a chair, it's the physical wood holding you up. But as we have seen, the chair is not a solid object. It is a collection of electromagnetic fields locked in a stalemate. The solidity you feel is just the sensation of 1042 times the strength of gravity pushing back against you. To truly understand electricity, you have to abandon your intuition and accept that acting at a distance is the rule, not the exception. You have to rebuild your worldview from the ground up, starting with the fact that empty space is the most active place in the universe. This is uncomfortable because the electromagnetic force is fundamental. You cannot look under it. In science, we usually explain complex things by breaking them down into simpler parts. We explain biology with chemistry and chemistry with physics, but when you reach the fundamental force, the chain of why ends. You cannot say the electromagnetic force is like a spring or a rope, because springs and ropes are themselves made of electromagnetic forces. It simply is. It is a core property of the universe, a rule of the game that we discovered rather than invented. This realization humbles us. It reminds us that our sensory experience is a filtered, simplified version of a much more insane reality. We see objects, but the universe sees fields. We see touch, but the universe sees a carefully balanced dance of cancellation and repulsion. Accepting this brute fact is the price of admission for modern life. We have traded our simple, mechanical intuition for a world of infinite power and communication. We have accepted that the world is electric, and in doing so, we have gained the ability to command nature itself. But we must never forget that underneath the familiar hum of our gadgets lies a force so monstrous that, if it were to lose its balance for even a microsecond, the very atoms of our bodies would fly apart. We live on the edge of this invisible volcano every day, protected only by the perfect equality of positive and negative charges. It is a testament to the stability of the universe and to the curiosity of the human mind that we can not only live within this force, but use it to build a home. So, what is electricity really? After this journey, you realize that electricity isn't a thing. It's not a liquid, a substance, or a utility that arrives in a bill. Electricity is simply the name we give to the act of manipulating the fundamental force of the universe to do our bidding. It is the proof that the world is not what it seems. The world seems mechanical and solid, but that is a persistent illusion. The real world is a silent, invisible ocean of fields acting across empty space. When you see a child's balloon attract a piece of paper, you aren't seeing a trick. You are seeing the raw, unshielded power that makes chemistry, biology, and the very structure of matter possible. When you turn on a light, you aren't just using a service. You are commanding electromagnetic fields that permeate the entire cosmos. You are reaching out across hundreds of miles of wire and dictating the behavior of trillions of particles. This is one of the greatest triumphs of human intelligence. We took a force that acts at a distance, a force so monstrously strong it should have torn the world asunder, and we found the beauty in its cancellation. We learned to listen to the whisper of moving magnets and the shuffle of electrons. We built a civilization on the back of a ghost. Next time you flip a switch, I want you to pause and feel the weight of that action. You aren't just lighting a room. You are participating in a global, high-speed conversation between metal and motion. You are making electrons push each other across entire cities. You are converting the mechanical energy of a spinning planet into electromagnetic waves that hit your eyes and allow you to see. Electricity is not about comfort or convenience. It is about truth. It is a window into the fundamental nature of reality. A reality where everything is connected, where nothing ever truly touches, and where we have learned to wield the power of nature itself. We have moved beyond the fluid, contact misconception of our ancestors and stepped into a world of fields. The world is electric. The push is constant. And for the first time in history, the switch is in your hands.